But what was interesting is occupying the Bunnies' perspectives and going into the head of each girl, I realized each one felt vulnerable in a different way. Each one felt like an outsider within this clique. You know, there's all this stuff going on between them. There's desire, there's competition, there's envy, there's a hierarchy of power. The power dynamics are always shifting. Nobody quite knows their footing in this group, and that's the truth.
The library was my space, and there was just so much.
To the Harbor Grace excursion with the boys to have a time.
Initially, or to start, I want to thank Mona for being here, as her book has recently come out, and it is generating a lot of interest in a lot of different places. And it's not easy when you're used to being a writer and working on something to now be out and wearing nice clothes and promoting a book, meeting lots of people. It is very enjoyable, but it's also hard. So I appreciate that we all get to be here with her tonight, and also especially thank all of you for making time to come out tonight to listen to us talk about Mona's book. Just as a writer and as a reader, for me, it's very encouraging to see so many people here for a book event. I think that's really, really just nice, and I appreciate that. So thank you all for being here.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I'm so honored. Yeah.
And I think we're going to start the event with a little reading, a short reading, which will be a nice way to start it.
Yes. Thank you so much, Iain. I'm so honored. I'm a huge fan, so it's such a joy to share the stage with you. And thank you all so much for coming. I'm really thrilled. You know, I grew up in Toronto, so this is really meaningful to me to be here. Yeah. So I'm gonna read a little bit from We Love You, Bunny, just a taste, Bunny, just from the opening. So for those of you who don't know, Bunny is a New England campus novel. It's about a clique of very privileged young girls, these MFA students, who call each other Bunny and who conjure hot men out of rabbits in very ritualistic, violent, off-campus workshops. And the story is told from the perspective of Sam Mackey, who is an outsider student who hates these bunnies, but she gets sucked into their boy-making cult in spite of herself. We Love You, Bunny, which I still maintain can be read without having read Bunny, is a prequel and a sequel, and it starts 2 years after they've all graduated. Sam has written a novel called Bunny. The bunnies have found out. They are pissed. They kidnap her while she's on book tour, and they tie her up in an attic, and they proceed to tell her how she got them all wrong. So I'm just going to read from one bunny's perspective. This is Cupcake. Hi there, Bunny, remember me? So clever of you, truly, to reduce me to a baked good. So funny that you described me as a maniacal hair braider, or what was it again? A child of the corn going to prom? I'm not going to comment further on your novel, We Agreed to Not, except to say that when I perused it during a rehearsal break, I'm back in theater now, by the way. Oh, it's very lucrative. I laughed until I cried blood. So funny how you let your imagination just run away with you like that. How you really don't know anything at all about me or us or even like reality, really. I'll just hang on to the axe while we talk. Is that okay with you? I'll just get a bit closer to you physically also, so you can see my dress up close, the color of dreamy skyscapes tonight. Smell my lemony sugar smell, which I know turns you on a little, Bunny, don't deny it. In your novel, which I won't mention again ever, you even said you wanted to eat me when you first saw me, didn't you? I knew that. Could sense your hunger, both writerly and sexual, from the start. Could see it in your crazy eyes, through your bitchy hair curtain, black as night, and it explains so much. It's why I didn't take any of your lies about me or your very bad prose personally, not at all. I took it instead as a very elaborate, yet ultimately crude fan fiction. Let me get even closer to you now so we can whisper, just you and I, if need be. So you can look right into my anime eyes while I set some things straight, as it were. About how it all started, Bunny. Before the boys, before the axe, before the magic of this attic was made known to us, before we were even made known to one another. I actually fought to be the first one to tell because, believe it or not, and on this point we sometimes disagree, it all began with me, actually. Yes, me, Coraline. It began with me, Coraline. What a Herculean effort you made to disguise my real name, by the way. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you for that reading. I think it's kind of relevant for the first question I was going to ask, which is it began with me. And something, having read both of the books and really enjoyed them, how did the first book, Bunny, how did that start? What brought you to that story, and what was the impetus of the original novel?
Yeah. Well, I was an MFA student in New England, and I did think when I was there this would make a great horror novel. So much in being an art student that is the stuff of horror. So much of being a writer is this horror, honestly. So yeah, I think the seed was planted when I was an MFA student. And I was also kind of dreaming about this other thing that felt connected. I wanted to write about a gang of like Snow Whites. I remember that. That was in my head, like just a girl clique, a really menacing girl clique, and report from the outside about it. And then I realized it was the same story. And there were bunnies all over my campus. There are bunnies all over campuses all across the country, is what I have now learned.
Well, I was going to ask you actually at one point why bunnies in particular.
Yeah.
So that was part of it, that you actually would see them.
I would see them all the time. Yeah, and it's such an interesting kind of diminutive and nickname that women can use for each other. It's a little old school.
Yeah.
But you hear it.
Oh yeah, you still hear it.
Yeah, you still hear it. And there's something a little, even though it's sweet, I don't know. There's like a shadow side to calling somebody bunny to me.
And even the way a bunny moves, there's something about it. It's endearing, but it also feels like they're up to something.
Yeah, they're up to something. Yeah. They're totally up to something. I always think so. And it always feels magical to see them no matter how many times you see them.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's unlike squirrels, which have a bad rap.
Which are very, it's just, there's a squirrel.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So then what was it that made you decide or want to return to that world?
Yeah.
With We Love You, Bunny, in the form of and as you said, I also believe that I think the novel can be read on its own. You don't have to have read the previous one. I think it's helpful, but it certainly stands on its own. And that's, I think, an interesting endeavor for an author to return to a world and kind of explore it in new ways. So I'm curious what it was about that world that kind of drew you back into it.
Yeah, well, it's funny, because I didn't even think I would finish Bunny. I quit many times because I just
The original novel.
Yeah, the original novel. Yeah, I really did. I just thought I wouldn't be able to pull off the idea. I hadn't written something like that before. My first book, 13 Ways, was so realistic. It was set in the world that we know. Bunny, I knew would use the surreal. I knew it would use horror, fairy tale. I'd truly never written fiction like that before, so I just didn't know if I could do it. And I constantly just thought, forget it. It's too dumb. Just don't do it.
Were you feeling that at the beginning, at the outset, or were you still feeling that as you
No, I was
created?
so compelled by it. I was so drawn, the whole time. That's what kind of kept me going, was just being so invested in it, in the idea and in the characters, that I kept going even though I was so insecure about it. But when I finished, I had such an amazing experience writing it. I think because I thought it would never see the light of day. I truly did.
So it was almost freeing in that way then.
Yes, it was so freeing. It was so exhilarating to kind of write this story with no real expectations that it would have a life beyond my dark room, that the book really became a friend, and it really became alive to me. And so when I did sell it and I turned it in, I wasn't happy. I was actually sad to lose it, and I missed it almost immediately upon giving it up. And it was quite profound. I experienced this kind of sadness for a few months, really, until I kind of discovered All's Well, and I started writing that. And then I missed that book when I was finished, too. The same thing happened with Rouge. So I think it's just part of my process. But Bunny never left me. I always felt compelled to return to this world. And I think around the time that All's Well came out, readers were kind of finding it online. I remember my U.S. publisher wrote me, and they were like, "It's selling, and we don't quite know why."
It's not a very nice email. We have no idea why people are liking this.
We need to look into this. And I would start to get tagged, like on social media with art that readers were making out of the book. It was really, really moving. And so I think readers were giving me permission to return to the place that I always wanted to return to from the minute I finished it.
That's really interesting, though, to think that readers kind of have that authority to sort of offer to you as the author the invitation back into that world to kind of explore it in a new way.
Yeah, well, I think reading is creative. I've always felt that way. Clive Barker, this horror writer who I love, calls reading a creative act, and he says that the reader is a co-creator. And I feel like that's true. My experience of reading is very creative. And so it kind of makes sense to me that like it found a life with readers. And so it kind of, I had permission for it to become more alive for me, you know?
Do you think you used your experience then as a reader while you were first writing the initial novel that, as you said, there were moments where you maybe struggled with?
Oh, yeah.
Did you think about yourself then as a reader and how much, and I assume that you're probably like this as a reader because I am, and it's something I really love about all your books really, that it does feel like it's something new.
Yeah.
You know, and as a reader, when you come across a book like that, there's a jolt, there's a thrill of excitement, knowing that I'm not reading something I've read before, and it might be difficult at first. There might be a moment or two where you have to get into that world or get your bearings a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to think as the author then, if you were sort of feeling that same sense, did you kind of use your own experience as a reader to get you through that maybe?
Yeah, I did. There are a lot of kind of like holy shit kind of moments in Bunny that I had to kind of move through, like surreal moments, you know, where the character is in a really surreal moment in the book, like a head explodes, you know? Boys are being made out of bunnies, you know, so you got to get into that headspace where you can report that in a way that actually feels real, you know, like feels real for the reader. Like, yes, it's kind of trippy, but it also should feel real. Otherwise...
To not take the reader out of what they're
Exactly.
reading.
So kind of just remembering that you're reporting from a consciousness and being in the body of this character and then trying to move through this kind of like, you know, unusual world was really exhilarating. And I did kind of try to put myself in a reader's headspace when I was doing that. All my work is really voice driven, so I just kind of follow the voice. And that's what the reader is hearing.
It is, and I think the reading experience is similar to that. There's an exhilaration to it because it does feel original, and it feels like it's something that as a reader I haven't come across before. I appreciate that as a reader, and I, you know, I'm curious, returning to the same world that you've created, but I think the one thing that was initially evident, I guess, as I was getting into the new book, was thinking about point of view and perspective. Obviously, that's, you know, and we had a particular point of view in the first novel from Sam. And you really embraced, I think, because again, you could think, okay, you're going back to this world. For you as the author, how are you going to do that in a way that feels exciting? Because I think I can speak for many writers by saying that most of us would love to return to maybe, like, I could probably write one book my whole life. But you just couldn't earn a living because your publisher doesn't want to publish the same book over and over. But like,
for sure.
it never feels complete.
It's
you never
true.
feel a sense of closure with characters, and so I really think it's admirable that you went back to it, and the way you did it was really amazing to switch the point of view, and so I'm curious what that was like to go back into this world but kind of turn the camera
Yeah.
onto people who didn't have it before.
Yeah, that was probably the most enticing thing, was the idea of occupying a very opposite perspective. Because, in Bunny, we're seeing the world through an outsider's eyes, and that book really is about loneliness in the imagination, and how one kind of can inform the other, and only Sam could tell that story. And of course, she's going to see this clique of like rich girls as one kind of thing, right? They're villains to her, and they are kind of villains.
But that changes. That's the thing.
Changes, yes.
It changes in
exactly.
this book.
Exactly. No, that narrative that Sam gives us in Bunny is subverted in We Love You, Bunny. And the bunnies throw a lot of shade at Samantha, and that was a pleasure to make fun of her through their eyes. Like, it was so much fun to see her through their eyes. And to occupy the villain's perspective is so delicious. And it actually made me realize that each girl, I think I really share Sam's perspective, because I am very, very fearful of groups. And so I identify with Sam. But what was interesting is occupying the bunnies' perspectives and going into the head of each girl. I realized each one felt vulnerable in a different way. Each one felt like an outsider within this clique. There's all this stuff going on between them. There's desire, there's competition, there's envy, there's a hierarchy of power. The power dynamics are always shifting. Nobody quite knows their footing in this group, and that's the truth. But to Sam, they're just like this,
They're one entity.
That's right. Yes, with multiple heads.
So for you as the author, did by going back and sort of in a way asking each of them to tell their version, did that change how you felt about the original story? Not just in the new novel, but did it actually sort of retroactively affect how you felt about the story itself and the characters?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I think I still have because the bunnies, of course, they have loathing for Sam. She took away their story. She tried to write them off as terrible artists. They're very upset. They think they are great creators. They are correcting her narrative by telling this story, the story of their own creation. But I think because I was with Sam for so long, I could laugh at her a little more.
Yeah.
She takes herself so seriously. But yeah, I still think ultimately I have great compassion for Sam. I just have more compassion than I did for the bunnies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And their creations. They are good artists. Yeah.
But also, I felt too, I think, a little bit in a really interesting way, the idea of delusion being deluded was changed as the point of view and perspective changed.
Yeah.
And so because I think I had taken one perspective, or I was in one point of view in the first novel, and in this novel I was offered something else, and so it made me question what I knew. Again, as a reader, I love that. That's a really interesting place to be.
Me too. I love that as a reader.
And you don't often get that. And I think one, it's by having another book written in it, but in a new way. And so I'd like to hear what you think about the idea of delusion, I guess, both specifically in this novel, but also in a way, as a reader, from the reader's point of view, I almost felt deluded. I didn't know, I felt in a way I didn't know exactly who to trust.
Yeah.
Whereas I did feel that before. So I'm interested, just in the idea of delusion and how that was kind of in your mind as you were working on it.
Well, Cupcake is very deluded. They're all deluded in their own particular way. Maybe all artists are deluded. Everybody is deluded.
But they are. That's the thing.
Yeah, they are.
Everybody here is deluded.
Yeah. No, totally. I think that's actually true, and that's something that interests me.
Absolutely.
How point of view, just shifting points of view, can shift our understanding of what's real.
Yes.
That's really, really interesting to me. And the bunnies have a collective agenda. They want to correct this narrative, so they're deluded, and they are like correcting Sam's delusion. But each one of them also has an individual agenda too, which is to make a claim that they are the ones responsible for this particular magic. That is its own delusion on top of the collective delusion. And
that's really
fun.
interesting too, because to me, in a way, you teach, and so you are exposed to writing workshops.
Oh yes. Very
which
much.
is not something I have had much experience with, but I sort of, to me, it felt almost there was some sort of like athletic sense of competition, and the way there can be with a team, say that a team wins together, but often there are some underlying feelings of, I did a little bit more than this person on my team. Or,
that's right.
And in a way, that sort of competitiveness really sort of comes through in the story. And was that sort of a driving force between these characters, that sort of competitiveness to not only about truth, but about I was the one who made this happen.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was so amusing to me how they would try to undermine each other's kind of claims to authority. Because authority is such a crazy idea in any case. You know, who does it really belong to? And that's what the book is asking. I mean, in a way, it truly is. And then trying to hang on too much to your idea of authority, you'll always lose, you know? And so it just reveals so much about our own like frailties as humans, that we have to make these claims, you know, of authorship, and just kind of throw shade at each other to do it. It's like the dirtier part of being a writer. You know?
And there is almost something, in a way, endearing about it.
Yes, it's sweet. It's adorable how they're like trying to make these claims.
It is in a way, because it is sort of human.
It's funny.
In a way, you know?
Totally.
Something else that I've been wanting to ask you about, and it sometimes can be hard from the author's point of view to talk about, but is the tone of the book.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm particularly interested to ask you this question is the tone in We Love You, Bunny is so distinct.
Yeah.
And to me, that's again something that I think for any novel is a tricky thing to achieve. Is to really offer a reader an original tone. Yeah. And what you've done is be able to do it in a way that is both humorous and there's a lightness to it, while also existing in the realm of surreal.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And those two things, I think, are extremely difficult to put together. Even though it's a really nice place to be. It's almost like thinking about if you had to like make a hot tub or something. It's a really nice place to be.
Sure.
But how do you do it? You know.
Right.
And I feel like you've done that really well. There are moments in the book, even when you first started reading it, it's funny. But as you read more and you get into it, it throws the tone has the ability to kind of disarm you and unsettle you, and I really love that about it. So I'm curious what it was like to, you know, how did you settle on the tone? How did you think to do that? And especially also with the dialogue as well.
Yeah. Well, Frankenstein was kind of a very useful kind of structural model for it, because I really did want to explore creation. That was what was drawing me. It was to kind of, you know, subvert the idea that these girls are simply villains and get into their heads and tell the story of their own relationship to creativity. So Frankenstein is the story of creation. We get the story from the creator's perspective, and we also get the story from the creation's perspective. And one narrative subverts the other, right? And then you don't know who the monster is in the end. So I knew I wanted that. I knew I kind of wanted their story to be this performative thing that they are telling someone. And that's the other thing about Frankenstein too. I love that the narratives in Frankenstein are performances for a very particular listener, and the listener keeps shifting. You know, that was so exciting to me. And that kind of determined the tone too, because it's very performative. The bunnies are trying to make a case, and they're pissed, which is great. It's great for narrative tension, and it's just great for the energy. It was just crackling with their anger. You know, they have a score to settle. But once they've made their case about the creation, I wanted to hear from the actual creation. And that was very intimidating. I mean,
did you know that going into it? Did you?
Yes. Yeah, I knew that I wanted to write a bunny boy's perspective. That was such a temptation. I was so excited by the prospect of inhabiting that set of eyes. Like, what would that feel like? I have no idea. What would it be like to be a bunny boy? Like, subjected to the bunny's revision, subjected to a whole bunch of writers, you know, in an MFA program. How horrible. And so I was very scared. I didn't know what he might sound like.
This is Arius.
This is Arius. This is my creation. This is my bunny boy. And I got COVID. just before I started writing him. And that was great because
Almost like a fever dream.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes. I was just a little bit brain dead in a good way.
In a good way.
Like I was able to kind of shut off reason,
Yes.
which was important, and just kind of tune into a frequency, listen to my intuition, and he came out fully formed with his smileys and frownies punctuating his conversation.
So
Yeah.
so it felt almost like it was kind of flowing through you then. Like it was.
It did. It was exhilarating to write him.
Wow.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
actually does read that way.
Oh, good.
It really no, but it does. I mean, I think that's really
Yeah.
interesting to hear that it felt so alive. It feels alive as you're reading
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
you know?
It's alive. It's
Yeah.
Frankenstein. Yeah, no, I know. I wanted that feeling. I mean, I knew a few things. I knew I wanted him. It's his
How did you
story
come up with the name?
Arius?
Yeah.
It's a Canadian allergy medication. Yeah, but it doesn't
Really?
sound. Yes, no, it really is. It doesn't.
that.
It
Yeah,
doesn't
okay.
sound like that, but
No.
it's like it's kind of.
It kind of does
mundane.
sound like that
It
now that you
does,
say
yeah,
that.
yeah. But it also sounds kind of mythic. Like it could be Eros or Ares. Like
Well,
you
exactly.
could mistake it for a Greek god, but it's
Yes.
actually just allergy medication. Yeah. Which is actually really important to the story. Allergies are important because there's
Yes, yes.
bunnies live in gardens and
Yes.
grass. So yeah.
So I think also in a way connected to tone is
Yeah.
kind of how you're able to bring in elements of genre into the
Yeah.
story in a way that I admire and that I really appreciate as a writer,
Thank
but
you.
also as a reader. I think it feels exciting, and so obviously it's for me. I think the biggest thing that for me to take the first time I read it was humor. It
Yeah.
really felt humorous to me. But the second time I read it, I what was more evident was some of a bit more of the darkness
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well, and I think elements that felt truly surreal to me in a way that I don't come across too often, and in a way that I really liked. So I'm wondering about that. I'm wondering how did you think to do that? What was it that excited you about trying to, instead of writing a horror novel or
Yeah.
a humorous novel, you wrote your own novel.
Yeah.
And in doing that,
Thank
you
you.
were able to incorporate various elements.
Yeah. I mean, I think because it's a story about creation, creation is fundamentally a mystery, right? I mean, it's so mysterious what makes something feel alive and what just, is just kind of dead, right? We can't even say what it is that kind of activates a piece of art and makes it feel alive to us. So I wanted the book to be shot through with that kind of wonder, Arius's voice is kind of shot through with wonder. But he's also, the bunnies are scary. They're actually scary. They are villains. Well, I guess, I'll leave it up to the reader to decide about that. But I did still want the story to have darkness because there is also darkness and wonder, right? There is darkness in being a writer. You are trying to capture something onto a page. You're trying to kind of take something. Sometimes that's what it feels like. And that feels kind of dark to me and a little violent. All the language around writing is so violent for a reason, I think. Kill your darlings. Where did we get that? Right? I know. So it felt like horror is just naturally should sort of be there. And, because creation is a mystery, it feels magical to us. So it made sense to me to bring in the surreal as kind of a way to sort of mirror the way that it can feel to bring something to being,
Yes. So doing that, is that something that when you are beginning to write, this is more of a question about actually the writing process.
Yeah.
Because that's, I find really interesting. Do you plot out or plan out or outline aspects of the story to try and make sure that I want to get this point across or this aspect of the plot across, or because to me it reads, and I could be wrong, but to me, as I said, there's sort of both a vibrancy, an aliveness, but also a surprise. I felt the book is quite surprising.
Yeah.
And to
Thank
me,
you.
that makes me think of writing that isn't outlined.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong,
Yeah. No.
because there is obviously no right or wrong way to do it. But I'm really curious about that side of it, your process of actually writing and how much you kind of know before you write.
Yeah. I think I know some things. Like I knew that it was going to tell the story of the first year together before Sam sort of shows up. So I had that structure of one academic year, which was useful. I had the structure of Frankenstein because I knew I wanted it to be a story about creators and their creation and have one narrative subvert the other. I knew that. And I did know eventually that they would be telling Sam the story. So I knew that we were going to go forward in time and also backward, right? So I knew some things. I did. I knew that I was going to tell the story of the bunny boy. I knew that. But what his fate would be, how they would reveal that story of coming together, discovering that they had this creative power, beginning to create, the ramifications of all of that. No, a lot of that I didn't know until I was writing. It would come to me as I would go for walks after I would finish writing for the day. I would finish writing a scene, and I remember the ending came to me as I was walking.
Okay, I was going to ask you about the ending. If you knew that early on, or if that.
I knew about a third of the way through what the ending would be. There's a big, this book does have a slasher element, but it's a real subversion on the slasher. So the subversion part is something I just discovered on the walk, that it would be not quite a slasher, but still a slasher.
Well, and also it does have, without spoiling anything, it does have some very surprising elements.
Yes,
I would say.
Yes.
As you get through it, and you as a reader, you think, I think I've just read something that has surprised me, but now I think there'd be no more surprises. And then
there's more surprises.
There might be more surprises.
Those all came to me kind of on walks and as I was just kind of dreaming about the story. But the ending, truly the last lines of one part of the book, a very important part of the book, came to me as I was walking, and I wrote them down on my phone. And this was in January of 2023, mid-COVID. And I remember writing them and actually crying because I felt like I had it. And
Wow.
And then I wrote the book, and many months later I wrote the ending, and then I went back to my phone and it was almost exactly the same.
Really?
Yeah, but I didn't look at my phone again. I just took the note so that I would have it.
Just to kind of keep that in your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, just hearing that anecdote makes me wonder, particularly for a book like this, I think, is there a part of it as you're working on it that for you feels, it's a kind of a two-part question, both the most surprising moment but also the most exciting?
Yeah.
Because again, as a reader, there are lots of moments that to me felt exciting and surprising.
Yeah.
And so I would think there must have been moments when you were alone working on this story, feeling those same things. And there's something, I think, for everybody here too as readers, there's something nice, I think, about thinking about the author having moments like that.
Yeah.
Having moments when the author was excited.
Yeah.
So, that was one. What would be some of the most sort of the moments that you can remember that were both surprised you and really kind of excited you to keep going?
Yeah. Well, definitely discovering Arias's voice. That was a big moment. Just realizing that I knew it.
And was that a sort of an aha moment, or was it over the course of say months or something where you kind of and then you realized, okay, now I have it?
No, it was very quick. It was one morning. Right. I heard it and I was so grateful. I was almost scared. I was like, wow, it's here. It's really here. I got to be good to this character. I've got to take care of them because they're really here.
Yeah. It's almost like you finding it.
Yes.
Instead of,
Yes. And then the other big moment, it was revelatory, and I was so grateful because it did really feel like I was writing a slasher, and I was like, God, I don't want to write a slasher. I don't want to write a slasher. I can't go that far. Even though I find slashers fascinating, I teach a horror class, and we talk about the slasher. When I discovered what the twist would be on the slasher, I was so happy.
Yeah.
I was so grateful. I was like, okay, I've got it. It's all going to work out.
It felt like it kind of clicked.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I could laugh about it.
Yes.
It was like there was an opportunity for humor.
Well, again, I think that is that underlies everything in the book.
Yes.
To me, is the humor,
Yeah.
right? And which provides a lightness to it,
Right.
a levity to it that in those moments, thinking about the dark moments or the surreal moments,
Yes.
it really helps, I think.
I think so too. I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for humor in a slasher. Slashers are often funny, but I don't laugh.
Yeah.
Like people are laughing.
No, you're right.
I don't think they're funny.
No, I
Yeah.
agree. I agree.
Yeah. So
The thing,
they want us to think that they're funny, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
thinking about
Yeah.
elements that are surreal compared to, I think, again, many contemporary novels, the attempt is to almost try and distill or somehow relay or reflect a sense of reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, in a certain way, is understandable, but it's also can be, I think, fairly limiting
Very.
to what you can offer a reader.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I feel like you threw that away. You threw that concept away.
Yeah.
And really embrace something different.
Yeah.
And there's something about, by doing that, you are obviously showing some form of reality and about people and relationships and life. And so can you tell me a little bit about that? Both
Sure.
your interest in what you find to be surreal and how you can use that as a technique to actually get at reality, I guess, in a new way.
That's why I use it. Yeah, it all kind of started with 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl, which is my first book. I'd been struggling with one particular story in that collection. It's about a woman dealing with body image issues, and it's very much set in this world as we know it. But there was one story about a mother and a daughter called My Mother's Idea of Sexy that I struggled with so much, and it was such a simple story in my head. I was just like, they just have to go to dinner, and it has to be awkward, and that's it. But I just couldn't do it. I couldn't get the truth of their dynamic and the depths of it down the way I wanted to get it down. And it was introducing the surreal in a sense of play and kind of starting with these like kind of ridiculous pink shoes. Just that sense of play suddenly opened this door in the story where I became more honest. And I could really go there and show the truth about these two women and their bond by bringing in their fantasies. Like their fantasies started showing me the truth of their bond and also their internal realities. And when I discovered that, it was so electric. I was so excited. That's what kind of got me thinking, oh, I want to try this bunny idea. I want to see if I can do it. Because I realized that sense of play can kind of bring you closer to the truth, which is what I think the surreal does. When it's at its most potent, it's a reflection of the real.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it does. It kind of shows us that without explaining, you know?
Well, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Did that feel scary at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because
it felt really scary.
I think that to me, I can relate to that idea that you're kind of drawn to something, and there's a particular kind of technique that feels accessible to what you're trying to do, but at the same time, it's like going into a dark basement or something.
Yeah.
And you don't know exactly what you're going to find or what
Right.
will be the result of it. And it's, in some ways, again, I commend you for going into that basement and trying to find what you can using that technique, because it is, I think it can be quite scary and unsettling. And I don't know if you felt that feeling.
Oh, many times. Many times I thought, oh gosh, I don't know.
Don't know where I'm. What will come of this?
But just staying truthful to the character's experience. Always remembering, at least in my case, that I'm inhabiting a particular body, a particular perspective. Always helps me if I get too far afield, and keeps it real. Like keeps it feeling like, oh yeah, this, I believe this. There's a stake to this. Like I'm actually invested in this. This feels real. Right? Because what is real?
Well, exactly.
It's fiction.
Exactly.
But for it to feel real, it has to resonate in the heart. And so that's all you have to do, is just try to do that. And if I remember that I'm in a body and I'm with a character, usually that's my North Star.
And I think I would also then, because again, just something you do well, is that then you don't then feel you have to explain it all.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think by the process of doing that is almost comfort for the author to feel like, oh well. But in some ways, it deflates the excitement balloon of the reader.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Oh, totally.
Because it's more interesting if, as a reader, I get to feel like I'm interpreting this in the way that feels real for me as the person inhabiting my body.
That's right.
You know, and then it kind of connects me to the author of the book in a way that feels distinct and maybe no one else has, and that is also exciting. Which your book offers many times throughout the story is that sense that I feel like I'm kind of having a discussion with you, but it's kind of my own version of it.
Yes,
You know?
yes, that's the dream. You're the dream reader.